Okay, welcome everyone to the next episode of the Catributors podcast, first episode this year, and our guest Axillent. You want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hello. I'm Axillent, streamer from Sweden, and play a lot of both on NA and EU, and recently more on NA actually, because I've played a lot with Captain Honor and that gang over there. And I started to stream, it's almost 2 years now. A small follower base, not many subscribers, but hey, it's only a hobby for me. So I'm not quitting my day job yet.
To be fair, it wouldn't be recommended.
No.
Yeah, and then we can just jump into our first topic, which is briefly mentioning the latest awkwardness of wargaming, because they've decided to sell some tech ships. And the way they have decided to sell them is put them into bundles. Actually, can you buy another one as the Talinn? You can basically buy a Talinn bundle for discounted 12,250 doubloons, which I think is about 40 euros.
Discount, yeah.
Yeah,
not really a discount, because you can't buy them at an ordinary price, so it's no discount.
Exactly. That's the thing that really rubs me the wrong way. I mean, a lot of games offer skip stuff for money. Technically, you could just, I guess, if you have, free experience in ships, you could convert that for money, and research up. It's not necessarily that new of a thing, but you just don't pretend you're giving us a discount. They're charging, you get the perma camo and a bit of other stuff like a 6-point captain. But I am still assuming that the Talinn is worth, I think, about 7,000 doubloons or something.
It is. It doesn't set, like we've talked about monetization many times before, but this really doesn't set a good precedent for their. Not only, some people are going to be okay with the fact that they've brought these preview event camos available to people to buy. That's fair enough, but they're really expensive. So they've obviously not just gone, here's the cost of the camo. They've assigned a doubloon value to a tech tree ship, and it's not even it's as much as a tier 8 premium, but it's not going to be as good as a tier 8 premium, because the perma camo bonuses, I don't think, are they as good as tier 8 with the income gain you get from a full tier 8 premium ship? Because I remember reading somewhere once upon a time that the perma camos for tier 10 ships give you, if you have that on your tier 10 ship, it's about the same income game as a tier 8 premium ship. So I can't imagine a tier 8 premium perma camo is going to be the same as a regular tier 8 premium ship. But I don't know. Maybe they've buffed it or something.
No, I think you're right. If you have a premium ship, you get more value from the camo than on a tech tree perma camo, yeah.
So
they don't have the same value.
Pricing. This is absolutely, if you didn't get this previously, these bundles are the only way to get it, and we're going to make you absolutely pay through the nose for the privilege of being a completionist. Weirdly enough, you can get just the bundles of the Petro and the Riga together for less than just the Talinn, which is slightly odd. But they also have a bundle with the Talinn and the Talinn camo and the Petro camo for 25k as well. So if you just had the camos available for each individual ship, so players could go, okay, I want that one or that one or that one, that would be fine. I don't think anyone would have any problem with that. But the fact that they've stuck all these bundles in together is
I agree. It's a bundle, so it's a problem. Not the price in itself, it's bundling that people hate.
Yeah, if you had a choice, if you want to pay 7,000 doubloons for a tier 8 tech tree ship, sure, they can offer that choice, I have no problem with that. But if they force that into your bundle for the camo, it's just, it's not nice.
It's pretty anti-consumer. Let's call it what it is. It's extracting money out of players that they hope won't have the impulse control to to say no.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Because I have no value in Talinn, I have no value in a 6-point captain, I have no value in port slot because I have all of these things. I only want the camo. And to me, the camo is not worth 7,000 doubloons or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The wacky thing is that as someone that owns the Talinn but doesn't have that camo from the cruiser event, I can't even select that option in the shop because it says I've already got the ship. So presumably I would have to sell the ship so I could then pay actual money for the ship. I don't know. There's no option.
It's stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah. So that's definitely a wargaming fail. That's something I think we can all happily criticize them for.
I mean,
they could have done much better.
The thing is, if you could buy the bundle when you already had the Talinn, they would need to compensate you for the Talinn you already had, but you'd only get a bunch of credits because it doesn't really have a doubloon value, so they'd have to admit that they are overcharging you for a tech tree ship, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and...
Yeah, that's, Happy New Year, everyone, for wargaming.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of buying things, we then have a dev blog with the methods of distribution of new ships, and they just announced a few of the ships in testing, how they're going to be available.
It's always nice when they do this, though, because people can then plan ahead what currencies to save up.
Yeah.
That's really nice, right? Because we usually only get we used to only get last minute when it's released that we find out what something is for. But especially with things like steel that you need to grind for and you want to plan how you use your coupons, right? It's nice to know in advance what you actually keep your resources for. So I like it.
Yeah, I've known friends that just before release they have bought a steel ship, and then they realized, okay, next ship that I really wanted was also steel. That's a real bummer. So now they want to declare it in ahead of time. Yeah, I can plan ahead a little. I like that.
I do have coincidentally some steel lying around because I do think I want an incomparable.
Yeah, my next steel ship will be Ragnar. I only have 1800 steel left for that, so
it's been a bit of a sleeper hit, that one. Like, you don't see them very often, but it is quite an interesting little. It's pure gunboat madness, but yeah, it can be very, very effective.
Yeah, I call Ragnar is actually a small land with a boost. I mean, it's on small and on speed.
So yeah, I've been kind of consistently surprised that it hasn't been more popular as a ship, because it's not like it's super niche. There's plenty of other gunboat destroyers and people that play them. So yeah. It's tough choosing which steel ship to get, though. There are some good ones.
Yeah, I think the problem is most players that accumulate steel regularly, they are cruiser or battleship players. They go for those steel ships first. Therefore, the DD steel ships are less frequently bought.
Well, there you go. If you've got a lot of steel and you want to be a hipster, get the Ragnar.
Yeah.
Yeah, then speaking of destroyers, the 4th Germany is coming for coal.
That will be my next coal ship, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I have enough coal lying around, so I'd probably pick that up. I haven't been interested in the latest coal releases, but this is one that I'll probably get.
I mean, it's a new class of US destroyer. I think it's one of the first post-war destroyer designs. So I think just on the basis of people with an interest in historical ships will be quite keen on getting this one as well. It's always nice when ships like this appear in game.
Yeah, and if they are available for like coal, right? And not put behind a steel wall or something like that.
It's interesting that, especially with some of the smaller ships, we've moved very firmly into Cold War territory.
Well,
So,
I mean,
I'll see what we get from the navies, I suppose.
They want to expand the available real ships that they introduce.
Yeah.
So
it kind of makes sense. But if you can fit them in the scope of the game without, like, there's certain things that are probably never going to appear, like we're probably never going to get Kirov class battle cruisers, for example. I can't imagine Granite anti-ship missiles fitting particularly well into the current scope of the game. But I don't know. It seems like the kind of thing Gaijin might do, though. They quite happily expand.
Yeah, we can have that if I can, on my Halland, get the missiles that Halland had in real life. So, yeah, why not? But that would be a completely another game, so...
It just wait for the super ships then in a year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've got the tier 11s, now we just need to wait for the tier 12s. So then we have Sevastopol. Have we had any other information about Sevastopol?
No, I haven't seen anyone.
There was some stuff, I think, in Dev Block. It's just like, I think, well, it's another tier 10 Russian cruiser, big one. And I think it's basically, it sacrifices the Raider so they can focus more on guns and armor, things like that.
Yeah, it's only 6 380, so 6 15-inch guns. So I'm wondering if it'll be something along the lines of the Borodino and the Champagne and...
it's a cruiser. 638 is pretty good for a cruiser.
Oh, wait, yeah, it's cruiser. I thought it was a battleship. It's because it says it resembles a small battleship, and my brain read that and went, oh, battleship. No, okay. Yeah, no, that's a 15-inch gun, so that puts it on a par with... is it the Aegea or the other one that's got the 15-inch guns? There's one of them, one of the German tier 9s.
I think the Siegfried has the bigger guns.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's the Aegea has the 305, so yeah, Siegfried. That'll be similar armament, but I guess we'll see what it's like in terms of armor and survivability. I don't know. I really like Siegfried, so maybe I'll end up really liking the Sevastopol. The fact as a research point ship gives me a reason to actually go and do some line resets, I suppose.
I mean, it's Russian, so it's probably good.
Russian bias.
Then Atlantico, we already knew that was going to be the next dockyard ship. I think that be interesting to see what kind of grind they put that behind, because that looks like it could be quite fun unless they completely neuter it.
Unfortunately, so far they have never had really great dockyard ship. I think the best so far was the ZF6, and even that it's a decent ship, but it's also not.
Arguably the Repulse in the current the current lineup.
But it's only like the tier 6 mid price. Like they've for some reason they tend to make sure that all the dockyard ships are kind of meh. Like the end prices, which is kind of surprising because you'd expect them to want to milk people.
Yeah, they have been kind of... on the one hand, hooray, they're not overpowered, but you want them at least to be fun to play, which quite a few of them haven't really been that fun to play.
Yeah, I got the CF6, and it's a good ship, but it's not fun to play to me. I don't know. It lacks the fun part.
Yeah, it's you'll rely a lot of getting good use of your reload booster. So you have like this. You gotta looking for the right situation. Then you need to use your reload booster, and then you have some cool off until it's ready again. It's not the most engaging play style, I guess.
No. And to me, it's odd to have a German DD without a hydro. So I love my hydros.
Oh yeah. So let's hope that the Atlantico will be the first actually truly fun, good dockyard ship. But who knows?
Yeah.
And then we have like we knew the Kurfürst and the Khabarovsk are going to be replaced. And they said it will happen at the beginning of 2022, which isn't really that specific, but I don't know, maybe next patch?
I would guess March. I don't think we will see it that in next patch, but the patch after that, so March maybe. That's my guess.
It's nice that they're being added as the Moskva was previously. That they're not being taken out if you don't have one already. You'll still be able to get one in future. It's just if you do already have one, you get the benefit of some credits, and I think you will get perma camos for the new ship if you have perma camos for the existing ships as well.
Yeah, you get the perma if you already have the perma.
Yeah, and the important part, yes, I guess you don't have to sell the ship. If you have it, you get the credits as if you would have sold it.
Yeah. I must say, every time Wargaming has done this, like they did for Moskva, etc., they have been quite nice in giving you free stuff if you already have the ship. They could very well have just said, yeah, you get the ship, but you don't get the permacam, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, that's what they did with Moskva. Like, before Moskva, they were very generous, and then with Moskva, they were like, you know what? No more Mr. Nice Wargaming. And now they've basically reversed on that, which is good.
Yeah.
I do wonder how much of that is trying to repair some of their community reputation if they've decided that actually, we'll just go back to the more... We'll do it the more generous way and hope that buys us some brownie points.
Possibly,
yeah.
I mean, they'll need a lot of brownie points with submarines.
A lot. They have a big debt to repay, so yeah.
Yes, so other than some new ships, there are some changes to Yamagiri, and they now give you the choice between, Yamagiri is that super destroyer where you can change the torpedoes that you have, which I think is a nice mechanic. You could use that on warships. And
it's almost weird in a way it's taken this long for them to try doing that with anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can switch ammunition on your main gun, so why wouldn't you be able to switch torpedoes, right? So yeah, you can now, you have the option with the 8 and 20s, or you can have the 12 and 20. So yeah, I mean, I think super ships are gonna be tested on live with was the next patch when they started testing super ships in random battles?
I think it was the next patch, yes.
So I guess we'll all see those pretty soon.
There is a comment from Think the Dog in the chat about 8-inch guns on destroyers that they was it a Fletcher class or was it one of the Forest Shermans? But I'm not entirely sure from their comments. But the idea of a Forest Sherman. Okay, yeah, the idea of a destroyer sailing around with 8-inch guns. And we've got some already that have like the 6-inch guns. Not that they're terribly effective. Those few that we do have. Oh, the German 152. Or is it 150 millimeter ones? You know, they're better at fighting cruisers than they are other destroyers with those guns. But
yeah, I wouldn't like to see a destroyer with 8-inch guns. No.
But it's the kind of thing I could see Wargaming doing, like as a variation. Like, here's a destroyer with 8-inch guns. Enjoy.
I mean, super destroyer, right? Now we've opened the door wide for weird stuff.
Can you imagine what that would be?
But in a way, isn't that what the new German destroyers are meant to be?
But they only tier 10, you can go bigger.
Yeah, but...
Just give them time. They'll go there.
Aha, think. Okay. It's your alt account. Okay. Hi there. Didn't realize that.
I didn't either. So is
sneaky Captain Honor.
do you have it? Your dog wasn't called Fink, was it? Or do you have a new dog? Well, aside from that, the main topic for tonight is the topic we've all been looking forward to once more. It's submarines! Yay!
Oh, exactly. Everyone's favorite topic. Has been so favorite topic, so everyone has forgotten the CV debacle. CVs has been normalized.
Well, I mean, the first thing is okay. I think I mentioned only, but basically they've now decided to remove submarines for 2 patches while they work on something, and this is where I have to admit I have been wrong, because I assumed, because so far they've never been willing to remove submarines, even though they already announced changes and they weren't actually testing them. So I believe that they just keep them then and call them released at some point. But apparently they remembered that they were testing them, and now they're going to take them off the server while they rework them and then bring them back. So that's finally a good news. Might be the only good news, but it's good news.
Well, yeah, we at least get a reprieve.
Yeah.
But it does kind of show still quite how unfinished and ill-fitting the concept is, even after all this development time that they've had to go, right, we're going to take them off the live server and presumably do some more substantial changes to them, rather than the more kind of iterative changes that we've been seeing in the last patches. Well, I say iterative. The changes they made with the separation of torpedo types was, I suppose, fairly substantial.
Yes, and I mean they also did like spotting changes and things like that. So I guess we can start with like the brief summary of the article, and then we'll get into details. And there's a lot of data here, which is also the good news, right? They are actually willing to share a lot of data. I doubt they draw the right conclusions from the data, but at least we can see the data, which is a good thing. So the first,
I have a lot to say about the data. Let's go through the summary first.
Yeah, first the changes in 10.10 and 10.11 have improved gameplay and interaction of the new class with surface ships. So basically, getting rid of the overpowered homing torps have improved interaction. That's true, because if you can actually dodge a torpedo and aren't just screwed, that makes for better interaction. Who knew? So the next part is even taking into account lifetime of submarines, which is comparable to destroyers. Other indications sub-combat effectiveness are significantly inferior to other classes. So I guess we'll talk a lot about this more later, but that's basically not entirely true. It's just drawing false conclusions from the data, mostly. Or a better formulate, it would be that for a lot of players are less effective in submarines, which might not be because of the submarines.
They're kind of taking it's the overall conclusion without any sort of nuance to it, basically.
Then since 10.10, the average
groups of
then I mean they said the average damage has been decreased. Yeah, because they got rid of overpowered homing torpedoes, which was actually the plan.
And I would also say another reason why the average damage can decrease so much is because I think the total number of played battles in submarines are much, much lower. So therefore, even a small change in damage on low number of battles have a larger impact. So I would like to see in these numbers, I would like to see how many battles are these numbers based on.
That would be interesting, yeah.
Because if you have 1,000 battles in the first round and get to one number there, and in the next round you have 500 battles only, and see a decrease in numbers, of course you have a decrease in average because you have fewer players.
Yeah, I mean, you generally need also to take into account how experienced are those all new players just trying out submarines. Have they played only 10 battles in submarines, or have they been like good? You need to kind of rate your data based on how much experience do people have in submarines and how effective are they, things like that.
Because we can already see after these rounds that players that have figured out how to play submarines make submarines really, really OP. They wreck player bases with their plays. And players that are inexperienced, they die in the first 2 minutes.
Yes.
It's a CV rework all over again.
Which, given, the amount of drama and everything and, community love for CVs before and after, you think they'd have learned something from that to not then having specifically gone, okay, CVs are too powerful in the hands of good players and too influential. The fact that they're then doing the exact same thing with submarines is just okay.
Yeah. Seeing the numbers, you can clearly see one of the graphs that they don't get new players to play submarines. It's the same players that play every other class. When they play submarines, every other class number of battles goes down. And when they stop playing subs, the other players go up again. So you have the same number of players regardless of class. You don't get new players from outside, which means that was one of the parameters they wanted with the submarines, to attract new players. And they have clearly failed to do that.
Although they might just put this on, we haven't released them yet, so I'm sure they have an excuse up sleeve somewhat for them. Or they'll just try to make submarines more attractive, which is the next point in the summary, which is very concerning. We will try to find other ways to increase the influence of submarines in combat, but we will not completely rule out the possibility of improving the torpedoes if other options will be in effect. And I mean, that scares me a little bit because I don't know how they want to increase the influence of submarines, because we don't want them to be like super spotters or something like that. And we definitely shouldn't increase their torpedo damage.
I would say, increase the damage of torpedoes, do that. But then you need to get all other ships some means of mitigating that damage. Remove the mitigation of the homing, take it away from repair. Repair should not be done for that. Make a new consumable for that. I don't know, make the sub visible when it pings. Or something. Then you get some kind of high risk, high rewards thing going on with the subs. As you have it today, you have low risk, high reward.
True.
I mean, it's a thing I said just before we started, but I've kind of come to the thought that they've clearly invested a lot of time and effort in this. Why not just have it be a separate game and maybe they'll get the new players they want that way? Even if it's like super niche. It's
Yeah, make
a bit of an
it.
indie thought, I suppose. Not in my game. Go and play your own game, but
Yeah, make a new game
they could
mode.
then-
Why didn't they test the subs in the convoy mode?
who knows?
That would have been perfect.
But yeah, it would then at least, even in their own game mode within World of Warships, but they could then build everything around the idea of subs and submarine balance rather than trying to shoehorn it into long established existing systems, which is clearly continuing to not work very well and kind of elude them as to how to make it be, both fun to play as a class, but then make it counterable, make it not overpowered in the hands of skilled players, which is kind of where we are now. So yeah, I don't know, but I don't know if they would want to like maybe they would see that as not worth the effort of doing a separate game. Hell, I mean, it's not like single player sub games are unpopular. I'm sure they could come up with something. Wargaming has repeatedly tried to launch themselves in different ways as some kind of publisher, and to be not just reliant on their World of Warships and World of Tanks games, but they've not really found anything that's taken off so far. So even if it was something sort of fairly niche, I'm sure there are people that would be willing to pay for a submarine game that was maybe not quite as involved as the full-on World War II sub-sim games, which usually have very, very, like, you get one or two subs to play with kind of thing. And even the more modern stuff like Cold Waters, you still have to rely on mods to actually then go and play with more subclasses than just like a small handful. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like there could be something there with all the time and effort and the assets they've got. They could put out something that nobody else has quite done before, but they don't. I don't know. I don't know if that's occurred to somebody at Wargaming or if there's just like they're just dead set on having subs within Warships, which we've seen, no sign of that not being the case, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm afraid that they're trying to push the square peg into the round hole here and force it into the game, no matter what.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Wargaming doesn't want to admit that there is no way to make subs, even though they have no idea how to make subs. They feel like if they just juggle the numbers a lot, then it will somehow work out. It's like they don't actually see the game, they just see some statistics, and I think if they just pull some numbers in the right directions, it will work out somehow. That's the feeling that I got. And I feel like the more we progress through these articles, the more it looks that way.
Yeah, they're too focused on their famous Excel sheets.
So speaking of Excels, the next summary would be that with the spotting changes, the subs are now spotting more like cruisers and no longer like destroyers, which is good. And then they have roughly the same popularity as aircraft carriers, but slightly lesser at tier 6 and tier 8. I mean, a bit of an interesting interpretation of the data there, but we all know they want the same popularity as about aircraft carriers, so they will balance around that probably. Then that's the most interesting. Based on the results on the public test, we realized that the planned changes do not lead to the desired results. So basically, for the first time, that's why they now take them off the live server for 2 patches, because when they tried the newest changes on the public test, they realized that they're still basically in the dark.
Yeah.
And which basically summarizes this, and we can now take a look at some graphs. So the first graphs that they're offering us are average absolute damage, average relative damage, spotting damage, lifetime in battle, and potential damage. And we can see that for the different patches where they've been testing, I guess. and for all the classes, which are aircraft carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and submarines. So
yeah, and I work quite a lot with numbers and graphs, and I can say these graphs are really hard to decipher what they actually mean and what they stand for. There's a lot of stuff missing here.
Yes, I mean, I don't know if they only decided to share this with us or if this was they're working with or if they changed it for a presentation. But for example, I mean, if you look at the absolute damage versus the relative damage, if you can see that there is like a small absolute damage bar, but a big relative damage bar. So you can see, for example, the cruisers tend to damage low health ships more than, for example, battleships. Even though battleships do percentage-wise more damage to ships, you can also see they do more total damage. So basically, battleships mostly shoot high health targets, and cruisers tend to shoot more low health. Things like that you can sort of get from those graphs, but it could have been presented a lot better.
Yeah.
And you can see, for example, that submarines, obviously that's what probably get from that submarines tend to be a lot less effective when it comes to dealing damage. They aren't that great at spotting, I guess. They take very little potential damage, which is clear because they are submerged a lot, and they die pretty quickly. And despite the fact that they live very long, they aren't very effective while they are. Basically, I think that's what they want to show us with this. And then obviously with the patches, when they changed the torpedoes, submarines have gone less effective. But as you said, what's missing there is like you need to look at those numbers based on skill and based on how many battles played, right? If everybody in this graph has played 10 submarine battles and they got bad stats, like if 99% of all players have only played 10 submarine battles, then those stats are very meaningless, right? Even though you have a big number of total battles, you need players who play submarines more often, who get more experience in them, and you need to like scale them by skill and so.
And the thing is, we know from previous information given our previous presentations, stuff like the CC Summit, we know that wargaming does look numbers broken down that way. So it's definitely been a choice not to break it down here. Hell, even in previous kind of public information dumps like this one, they have given numbers more broken down by kind of even kind of player win rate groups. Is probably the main way of doing it. And yeah, it's kind of interesting they've not done that here. And I suspect if they had, we would see quite a lot of disparity, maybe even more so than other classes, between the high-skilled players that have kind of figured out the optimal way to play with them as they are at the moment versus people just trying them out, derping around a bit and dying very quickly.
Yeah, and one thing I realized when I looked at these numbers is I don't think wargaming realizes how important spotting is. Because okay, a submarine may not do that much damage, but it does spotting so effectively, so the rest of the ships can pretty much kill every DD.
Yeah, in terms of vision control, there's absolutely nothing that can beat them. You just go down to periscope depth.
Yeah.
As long as you've got sufficient air left.
And to me, that's a bigger problem than exact how much damage each torpedo do.
It's actually something that was less of an issue before when the subs were a lot slower. It was a lot easier to get out of position, but these days the subs can comfortably... it's a lot easier to get away, and it's a lot harder to get a submarine in a position where the destroyers can get far enough away to proxy spot, drop depth charges, and allow their allies to also be able to drop their airdropped depth charges as well. So yeah, it's kind of like that was almost the opposite problem with the slow subs. Is they were quite easy to corner and quite easy to deal with. So they were like, okay, let's make them faster, and then it's just introduced this whole new problem, which is, I don't know, welcome to game balance, I guess.
Yeah. To me, it would be so easy to fix the spotting problem, because if a submarine is on surface or periscope depth, that's the only time it should be spotting for the rest of the team. As soon as you go below surface, no more spotting for the team. That way, the DDs that are hunting that sub may not be killed so easily and have actually some kind of mean to actually kill that submarine. And you as a submarine have to think about your positioning, where you can get away, etc., etc. And a ping should automatically somehow reveal, not render your position, but at least on the minimap, give your position.
Yeah.
Because a ping will in real life make your submarine so visible. To me, the anti-submarine warfare is not working as it is today.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, I will say they do have spotting in those graphs, but basically, I mean, we all know carriers are king in spotting, and then there are basically destroyers, and then there are submarines, and depending on which version you look like, there is a bit of a difference how well I think submarines compare to the destroyers and so on, but submarines are always like on third. I mean, yeah, carriers are just way in the stratosphere when it comes to spotting, followed by destroyers. And then destroyers and subs are a bit fighting it out there, depending on which patch and tier we look at. Which also is combat effectiveness, but I'm not sure how much. I mean, let's say they have made it better, like in when they first started testing submarines, right? They could basically spot a lot better, even on. I don't quite remember what it was. Was it they had even more spotting on periscope depth, or could they even spot when they were lower or so on? But they have already slightly addressed spotting, but they're still pretty decent at spotting.
Yeah.
Then you mentioned sonar pings. Like the next thing here is torpedoes and sonar pings. The thing is that sonar pings are just not a very good concept in a way. It's the same with homing torpedoes as such, I think.
I agree. That's a bad concept, but if they stick with that, they have to address that problem.
True. There are two issues, right? The first is when you ping somebody, the person sees that he or she has been pinged. And the thing with torpedoes is usually the biggest boon to hitting torpedoes is the enemy not knowing where the torpedoes are coming from, right? Or that torpedoes are coming from them. If you play Destroyer, you know you generally don't want to alert the enemy of your presence. You don't want them to know where the torps are coming from either. So with a submarine, they always know that they are being targeted, and they even know the direction from. So this is already a bit of a problem. And then we have the homing thing, right? When you have homing torpedoes, if the homing is too good, they'll all hit and they'll be overpowered, almost all hit. And if the homing is too bad, then they are easily dodged because they're all clustered at one point and you know where they're coming from. So you do have a bit of a chance to avoid them. So balancing a homing mechanic and getting it right is, I'm not sure if it's possible, but it's incredibly hard. So it's why they want to go down a road of something, basically make their own life a lot worse, trying to make homing torpedoes work. And then there is obviously the problem that, you can't fight the homing thing. Which, I mean, even if you had like a better damage con for it or a separate damage con, it's... like if the torps hit, you shouldn't depend on if this thing is on cooldown or not, I feel like.
Yeah, it's a bit, that would be a kind of a sticking plaster solution at best.
Yeah. I agree, but yeah. I was just thinking about coming up with some kind of solution with this, as long as they have homing and ping.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not a very good concept. As if I've been thinking about, but there isn't really an obvious solution. I mean, you could make, for example, the pings. Like there is a thing that like a ping doesn't stick, for example, that you can't just, if you ping a target, then the ping only lasts like a second and it just briefly updates the torpedo guidance. Something like you can't have full homing, but you can like slightly correct your torpedoes after they've been launched. This is something that I think you could try.
That would be interesting. Yes, I like that idea.
And I mean, you maybe
then
don't.
You could introduce. Then you could introduce the length of how long this ping sticks could differentiate between different nations, between what the modules you have equipped, etc., etc. You can have captain skills, etc. That changes this number.
Yeah, and I mean you could also have them. The ping recharges too. You could also give them an immunity time period that you can't get pinged too frequently or something like that. But basically, make the ping a mechanic to not be an all enough, but be a slight correction, right? Your torpedoes, they for like a second or two they track, or once they change the course or update the course, and then they continue. And then you'd even have to consider if you need to show where the ping came from. Maybe to just see that you've been pinged, which once again doesn't give you the crucial information where to dodge from, but it gives you some information that you might need to dodge something. So you could experiment with that. How much information do you need to give the player, and how long should the ping stick, and how well should they correct the course? And I feel like you could play with that.
Yeah, I like that. That is something definitely worth experimenting with.
Then there is also you have now two torpedo types, the one that do more damage and the one that home. You could experiment with more different torpedo types. I mean, I don't know if there could be if they want to give submarines more contribution to the battle without doing direct damage or something. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could have slowing the thing is that they always try to pretend that it's some sort of historical or realistic game. So you'd have to.
That ship has sailed.
So then you could experiment with things you could have torpedoes that just slightly debuff an enemy in a way. Like, I don't know, a torpedo that slows you down, a torpedo that increases your reload, or you could experiment with certain effects, I think, if you want to just give them more utility.
Why not having a torpedo when it hits, it's radar jamming? Stops your radar from working.
I mean, sure.
You're kind of making submarines into, I don't know, like the Bard of World of Warships, really. Just
why not?
Having various effects on the enemies.
Sure, I mean, you could increase cooldowns on all their consumables, or briefly block the consumables or whatever.
Yeah, why not?
If you somehow want to give them more utility, that would certainly be an option. I think the real problem is also the way as Wargaming, I think, has noted later, the torpedo is just their only armament. But the problem is if you only have single-launch torpedoes, it's often a all or nothing kind of thing, right? And that also means you will have either an incredibly good game or incredibly bad game, depending on if you get that hit or not.
I mean, one thing they could do, and you would have to be careful how you implement this, but it would actually fit within the historical timeline of World War II and most of these subs, is pattern running torpedoes.
What are those?
Basically, they were primarily used against convoys. Germany definitely had them. I think Japan develop them? I'm not sure if the US did, but they would basically follow a set track. So they would be fired, and then they would turn around and come back, and then they would just kind of do this almost sort of sine wave kind of. I'm doing it. I don't know why I'm doing it that way. I could do it that way. That's probably easier to see.
Yeah.
Essentially, increase the chance of an individual weapon hitting something. So, I mean, that as an option might increase the effectiveness of individual torpedoes if you're firing them instead of just them going off in a straight line to the distance that after, say, like when they hit the edge of their 10 kilometers or whatever, is that they sort of turn around and maybe do a pattern or two, and then they might be more likely to hit something.
Yeah, and then you have a more like an area denial torp. Yeah, you know, when you fire torp there, you know, no ship can go in there for a while.
And again,
perfect way to block off
that would be more team utility, as opposed to just spotting.
And I mean, you can spread out a few, like, and basically create really an area where that's not. And then even if you get a hit, it's probably only one or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a thing that would actually be, you know, historical, if we can use that word.
Hey, we have a lot of good ideas.
Don't worry, they won't listen.
No, of course not.
So there is actually an interesting thing that the improvement made by your feedback made it possible to make the interaction between submarines and other classes healthier. At the same time, submarines were not overpowered before the change. And with 10.10 damage cost, submarines reduced by 20. They always like to throw in the thing like, oh, we listened to your feedback, but you were so wrong. It almost always it hears like that. So look, we listened to your feedback, but unfortunately, you guys are always wrong. And that's just not the case, because the problem is, and that right now, what a submarine can do is submarine can surface 3 kilometers in front of you. There is no way to detect the submarine before that happens. Then unload all of your torps into you and then dive down. And considering that your turrets are probably not turned the way the submarine is, you can't really get shots off that quickly. Well, I mean, depending on what ship you are. If you have depth charges that drop out your rear, you have no way to drop in depth charges. It all depends on how many ships with planes in the area pay attention. Because that's really something the submarine can just do right now. And that's sort of overpowered, right? If a submarine has, I mean, it needs spotting from somebody else, but you can totally underwater go there, surface, one-shot one basically, and dive again. And the only thing that they can do about it is drop planes, right? If enough battleships pay attention, you might be screwed. And if not, then nothing can be done. And that's exactly like, that's also a very frustrating interaction, right? I feel like you don't wanna, I mean, I get glass cannons, but you don't really wanna develop a class that's meant to just appear, pop up, one-shot somebody, and then see if it can get away or not. I don't think that's gonna add some good gameplay.
I mean, we already have the YOLO Emilio. We don't need a whole class that's like that.
No, absolutely not.
Well, I mean, you can pull a Hydro, and you see the YOLO Emilio coming. A submarine can dive below the Hydro.
And that's another thing. I really don't think a submarine should be able to hide from the Hydro. Not even on max depth. You should be able to see the ship. If you are in Hydro range, the submarine should be rendered.
Yes. I mean, if they really want to, maybe they could slightly decrease. Like, I mean, you have a different Hydro range for torpedoes, and for surface ships, you could have a third value for submarines. Maybe say a Hydro that Hydro surface ships at 6 kilometers only finds submarines at 5 kilometers. So give them a bit of a better, but it should detect submarines even if they're down there.
Yeah.
So yeah, the next graphs here are, like how people do damage, rubbing damage, torpedoes, torpedoes where sonar ping was active, and so on. Yeah, secondary damage, that's very important.
It's weird to me that some of them have functioning secondary guns, but even the ones with modeled AA don't have any AA.
Well,
Also, we did have a suggestion from chat of essentially reverse depth charges of that there were mine laying subs. That was a thing. As another possible mechanic of
mine laying submarines.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that would have to be a limited consumable, I think, if you're going to do something like that.
Oh yeah, that has to be limited, absolutely.
And you'd obviously need
interesting, yeah.
I mean, you could have mines that basically just remain for a certain amount of time, and maybe let them be spotted by Hydra or something like that, or if you get too close, so that you have a chance to avoid them. But if you could lie a minefield, and that minefield remains for, let's say, a minute or so, that could make them interesting, right?
And that would make submarines a bit unique, differ from actually being just a destroyer that is under the surface. Because that's what I feel right now. Submarines are just destroyers that can go on the surface, period.
I mean, pretty much, yeah.
I mean, they basically have reduced the utility aspect a bit, because submarines are usually not the ones that are camping. They can provide some spotting, but they can't provide smoke screens or so for anything, and they don't. If they are spotting, they're usually not spotting the enemy destroyers. I feel like usually they go like behind the lines and maybe spot the cruisers or battleships there in the back line. So they basically stripped a lot of the utility from the destroyers and made them a lot more extreme in just damage potential with one strike.
Yeah.
And then torpedoes are the only submarine weapon that, and they are relatively unreliable. Yes, torpedoes have always been relatively unreliable in dealing damage in World of Warships, because it depends, any weapon that needs to travel quite a long time to the enemy is somewhat unreliable, right? Because they can react, they cancel out of it. And with other things forcing you to stay away, like ships that spot you, prevent you from approaching. Like, if you decide to give them only torpedoes, Wargaming knew torpedoes are unreliable weapons. I guess that's why they kind of tried to get around this with the ping. But the problem is torpedoes deal so much damage. If you make a torpedo a reliable weapon, it's not gonna be a good concept. Or at least you have to make them... Yeah, I don't know. Like, the thing is, you can't nerf torpedoes down to basically guns and make them guns with somewhat different... It just doesn't really work that way. Not to mention that submarines can use the torpedoes very reliable, because they can get into 3 kilometers of you just surface and one-shot you. I mean, the thing is, if they stay at periscope depths, they aren't even detected, right? So if you have somebody else spotting for you and nobody is using any hydro or anything like that, you have a battleship there, you can surface at 3 kilometers from it, unload all of your torpedoes from periscope depth and just dive down again. And battleship goes boom.
Yeah, that's a really bad mechanic.
Yeah, which is... a lot of the observations bring us back to the fact that there is just too big of a skill gap. It's good submarines are basically overpowered right now, and bad submarines are basically utterly useless and do nothing. And there are just a lot more bad submarines than good submarines, which is to be expected.
And we also have another problem. Whenever we see a game with 2 submarines in each team, we have the problem that the game feels empty. You suddenly have no ships to shoot at, because it's 2 less ships that are spotted.
Yeah, especially if you have 2 subs, a carrier, and 3 destroyers or something like that, and you're wait, where is everybody?
Yeah. And that makes that type of game extremely boring. Sergeant Sully asked why the subs are only on even tiers. That's because they are only testing and haven't implemented all the subs yet. They're only implementing like CVs right now, just for testing to see how it works. They don't want to have 20 ships to fiddle around with. If they need to do changes, it's faster to do it on just 4 or 5 ships.
Yeah, I guess they just want to cover a little bit to see how ships at different tiers deal with them, without having that much work of working on portable submarines.
And I'm still annoyed that there are still some ships that don't have any kind of anti-submarine warfare.
Yes.
Like one of my favorite ships, the Tier 5 Ochotnik.
I love the Ochotnik too. Yeah,
I'm
so annoyed by
Ochotnik, but I hate when I'm in a game in the Tier 5 and have Tier 6 subs and 2 in each team, and I can't fight them.
The Leone at Tier 6 doesn't have any ASW weapons either.
No.
Yeah. It's an Ochotnik. It should have like 32 depth charges, right? Just line the entire outer ring with depth charges.
C5, the Dutch cruisers can use the airstrike. The airstrike works as a depth charge.
It does?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They don't have to be on the surface for that. I suppose I've played my Dutch cruisers enough to run across a submarine and try it out.
But the problem is they are extremely, they are more unreliable than anything, so good luck hitting anything.
Okay, I've learned something new there.
They don't hit on max depth, though. If the sub dives too far deep, they don't hit.
Okay. Interesting.
So, then going on with the amazing graphics here, one of the indicators we track, submarines have a much higher number of battles without any damage there than other classes. Yeah, but
of course.
Of course, because people don't know how to play subs, and if they just try to surface and do it wrong, they surface and get immediately detected and wrecked before they can shoot their torps or anything, then this is basically to be expected, right?
Yeah.
This is also what happens when you design a glass cannon and people don't know how to play the glass cannon. It's like
I have maybe contributed 1 or 2 games of my own with 0 damage in submarines.
Yeah, I have done that as well.
Yeah. I mean, sure, when you try them out, it's gonna happen, Only once you play more and get familiar with them is that gonna go away. And, what we need to know here is not just how many battles have been played with 0 damage, but how changes that the more you play, right? If you've played 300 submarine games, you probably have a lot less battles with 0 damage than a person who has played 5 submarines. It's like, in exciting news, we have figured out that people who don't know how to play a ship and play it for the first time are not very good at it.
Yeah.
More news at 11. So then we didn't plan for submarines to take away the top title of Scout. That's very nice of them. But it's not that the top Scout is aircraft carriers. What's very interesting is, we had the graphs up there, right? And you can see the spotting from carriers is basically like, spotting of carriers is more than twice generally than from destroyers. So calling the destroyers top Scouts just, ignores their own graphics that they've plastered all over this.
Yeah.
Which is, I know this is about submarines, but you can, if you show us the graphic, then, anyway. So they say the new class is roughly comparable to cruisers in spotting damage. Yeah, okay. With the latest changes, they basically say they have reduced the spotting. Well, it's still higher than cruisers, but it's no longer as far as destroyers.
Of course, spotting damage is low, since the class also is the class with the most zero damage games. Because they are killed off quickly, they can't spot. Therefore, you get low spotting damage as well.
And also, if you are relying a lot on spotting damage, that means you're pretty much exclusively relying on your teammates for that. So
yeah,
that's always a variable experience, if we can put it that way.
Yeah, I would also say that
so comparing spotting damage, I would remove all the games with subs having zero damage. Remove all those games and then look at the spotting damage. Then you can get a reliable number of, okay, how effective are the spotting?
True. Although I'll have to say that a lot of these days, I feel like as a submarine, you might want to use the spotting from other ship. Well, I mean, you can spot like until you get very close and you need to dive down. Or you can just, approach from the deep and then surface, use the spotting of others and then one-shot something and go away. But yeah, it's as we've already discussed, you also need to look at the numbers of good players.
Yeah.
Then I like this little chapter there. Although depth charge airstrike is currently risk-free, the setting of the original bombs did not allow for reliable damage to submarines. I mean, risk-free. Sure, like if you fire your guns at somebody, it's not like you risk getting hurt when you fire your weapons. That's how it's usually supposed to be. The thing is, you have a limited range. So basically, if you can drop a submarine with your airstrike, you probably need torpedo range. Except for some battleships who have like really long range airstrikes. But generally speaking, it's not necessarily risk-free because you are in strike range of the submarine if you can drop it. This is not like a carrier where, using carrier planes, that would be risk-free. Like attacking somebody with your carrier is risk-free because they can't actually shoot your carrier.
Yeah, you're not revealing yourself in the same way as firing your guns, even with but you don't have to because you're already going to be like there's not. I don't think there's any battleship that's stealthy enough that it's going to be inside of its airdrop depth charge range.
Yeah, I don't think you can stealth airdrop. Then we come to next. We come to the popularity graph that you mentioned earlier, Axillent, where you can see that basically every time. I mean, we can see, right, every time the mission resets and people have to regrind submarines, there is a dip. And every time less people play submarines, they play more other ships again. So as you said, right, it's just a redistribution of the player base. And interestingly enough, the only people who don't seem to be that the carriers seem to be at least interested in playing submarines.
Yeah. C-Files, I see you complaining about my volume. I changed the volume settings, see if that helped a little bit, or if I need to change it more. Oh, it's better. Perfect.
Okay. For me, the volume sounded okay, but...
Sound is one of those weird things when it comes to videos and streaming and
there's so many points of failure. It's Discord, it's Twitch, it's
True. So what else have they drawn from the popularity? They say that they are roughly the same as aircraft carriers, but slightly less so at tier 6 and tier 8. I mean, the first thing you have to note, obviously, is that right now, I mean, obviously you unlock the tier 6 and the tier 8 before the tier 10, but basically you just unlock them all by playing without any cost or so on. So naturally more people will play tier 10. So I'm not sure if the popularity graphs of tier 8 and 6 are that interesting at all anyway. Because people who will have unlocked submarines probably have unlocked all of them, and then they are probably gonna play tier 10 because most people play tier 10.
Yeah. Because everyone knows that lower tiers in World of Warships is not interesting to play. Everyone wants to play tier 9 and 10s.
Yeah. It's interesting they say that submarines are roughly at the level of aircraft carriers or something like that. They said roughly the same.
No, CFIs, they don't specifically say from how long time these graphs are from, but I think it's the recent two patches.
Sure. Most of the time they specified which patch here they didn't, or at least I can't see it. There is something here, but it's a little bit too small.
The popularity graphs has actually dates.
True.
But the other graphs doesn't have specified time. But I suspect that all numbers are from the same period.
Probably. But yeah, you can see that submarines, they tend to be a bit more popular than carriers. It just always drops when they get resetted. In the end, they basically match carriers, so people have lost interest in... Even the more dedicated submarine players, I guess, have lost interest in submarines in the end. Or maybe it's just that nobody else tries them out anymore.
I mean, I do wonder also how much the fact that we have dockyard missions going on and not many of them interact with subs specifically as a class. Like every other class has got a specific mission.
Thing. Yeah.
But aside from the kind of general things like earn XP and whatnot, that there isn't anything that matches with subs.
True.
So, probably not a huge reason, but I'm sure it's been... I mean, I know that's been partly my reason for not playing them that much, is I'm concentrating on playing things that will actually complete the dockyard missions.
I mean, that's actually a very good point. I haven't thought of that. That's very true. Obviously, if people want to complete the dockyard or a lot of other missions, then they can't play submarines to fulfill them, so other graphs are expected to go up. People play less subs. Which also is questionable if Wargaming thought of that.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that they've had something going on alongside some event that doesn't mesh with it, like, at all. They've definitely got form in that area.
But to me, it looks like the main population that plays subs are those who play cruisers, because cruisers feels the biggest changes when the sub has changes in popularity. Especially at the end here in December, when the popularity for submarine dips really hard. The only graph that goes really hard up is the cruiser population.
True.
So it seems that it's cruiser players that tries out the subs more than anyone else.
Possible.
And that would explain why I felt it was a period when I didn't see any cruisers in the game. It was only battleship destroyers and submarines.
I mean, it could also be that cruisers felt like they were screwed the most. So...
Yeah, could be that as well.
And like, especially if you get sunk by a lot of submarines in your cruiser, then you probably... Like, I want to be the one who's sinking cruisers. Maybe they switch to subs then.
I definitely feel like one of the more, like, especially the higher tiers, well, any tier, they're one of the more easily punished classes overall.
True.
Oh yeah. Cruisers were in the captain rework, they were screwed over big time. Especially light cruisers.
Then after the popularity, they mentioned, like, we've discussed before Christmas, basically, when they announced those changes, there were those depth charge changes that all looked like they were going to screw depth charges and counterplay. And once again, cheeky Wargamers, you mentioned that planned changes for future will significantly weaken the depth charge airstrikes. But the purpose of those changes was to strengthen this type of weapon. Well, it didn't really read that way. So now they come out saying, well, they tried it on public test, and the average damage of this weapon was increased by about 2.5 to 3 times, which is a very significant change. Yeah, but it's also the public test server, so let's keep in mind that the data might not be entirely comparable to the live server, so just a little thought there. But it gets more interesting than that, because then they have graphs where you can see how much they took damage. It's also worth noting that they vastly increased the hit points of submarines, so if you do more damage to a submarine, but the submarine has more hit points, it's, sort of compensating for that factor. Because, where was this? There is later they have graphs below show the comparison of the damage caused by submarines. And it's interestingly to note that while they note that submarines take more damage from depth charges by 2.5, 3 times, all the damage that submarines cause has actually gone up. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that they're talking about increasing the HP on the subs, decreasing the damage on the depth charges. That doesn't go well with my feelings about how it works today. It will be even more difficult to chase and kill the submarine.
Yeah,
I have game after game in my destroyer. I'm pressing G and get 8-9 depth charge hits on the submarine, and he still survives. And I ask myself, how? With 8-9 depth charge hits, the submarine should be dead.
True. I mean, that's the thing. They actually, I missed that. Maybe it was when it was before Christmas. But basically, they tested those changes apparently. So those changes where they nerfed the depth charges and increased the HP, those were tested, and they tried to tell us that that resulted in depth charges being better, because they say the average damage of this weapon type has been increased by 2.5 to 3 times. So they're trying to tell us that those changes made depth charges more effective. The problem is that they failed to take into account, first of all, the hit point change up here. And the second thing is that their graph shows that submarines dealt more damage after the changes, which would indicate that submarines fared better. So, it's it's sort of a bit that the point they are making doesn't actually reflect in the data, right? They're trying to tell us that basically they buffed the anti-submarine weapon, but coincidentally, submarines seem to be performing better. So, all bullshit.
Yeah, as C5 says, it's kind of like a shooting torps. 8 torps should kill 99% of the ships in the game. Yeah, unless you're pan-European DD.
Well, I do like to refer to their torpedoes as Swedish ticklers.
Yeah. That's another discussion. I really think pan-European torps, the alpha damage should be increased a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. So, what's the plan for the submarines?
Basically the thing is, and this is the first intelligent conclusion they've drawn, they've started to top testing submarines for now, because the changes they play, even this time, even on public test, I already saw that they are not going to accomplish what they want, right? So after muddling along for so long, they finally decided to do what you usually do with a test, You now analyze data, try to come up with an actual idea, and then test the new idea instead of keeping them on the live server. The problem is, as we've thought already, they don't seem to have an idea how to do that. And there are a lot of things in this whole article that are points for concern. Especially like, once again, don't try to tell me that you've buffed anti-submarine warfare so much when you then show me data that submarines perform better after it. So, Wargaming could really use
the point they think it is.
Yeah, and that's just. Like, I always wanted more data from Wargaming because they never really were willing to discuss things. But now that they are giving us data, it just shows what we've already suspected. They aren't very good at interpreting the data. Which is, I think, where this whole thing comes from, that people think like Wargaming isn't playing the game. Because they don't seem to know how to look at their own data.
Well, maybe you could be even more cynical and say, well, maybe they know exactly what it's saying, but they're presenting it as a different thing to fit the narrative that they want to give out, kind of thing. So,
I suspect you're more close to the truth. Yeah. I think they are not stupid. They know exactly what the numbers shows. But they really want to force their narrative on it. So they do everything to make the numbers fit.
Okay, possibly true. Like the way they misinterpret their own data in this article and the way they present, I guess, in this sort of cherry-picked data or so is, I guess it's sort of impressive. They still just... They want to fit that square thing in the round hole. And they want to tell everyone that it fits. So I'm wondering when is the next time we're gonna hear from them, because they've taken themselves 2 patches. And what other ideas they're going to come up with.
Hopefully they will keep us informed in the dev blogs. But maybe this will indicate that we might not see subs in this year.
Oh, don't give me hope. I mean,
that's my deepest hope, that they actually don't reintroduce the subs.
I mean, the thing is, they have never once mentioned that they might, like, early in submarine development, they always said, look, if we don't make them work, we'll drop them. But that talk has stopped a long time ago. And now even when they admit that they don't know how to make submarines, and basically this whole article is in a sort of way admitting that they have no idea what to do with them. So they're not going to pull it and wait for 2 months and hope they have an idea.
Well,
they still don't say that.
My suggestion of put them in a whole separate game and do whatever makes them work for that game.
Whole separate game, or at least in a separate game mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are options to work with what they got. They're just unwilling to pursue them, I guess.
I would love to see submarines in a convoy game mode.
Yeah, and I mean, you could even make it PvE. You don't have to make it PvP, which would make balancing a lot easier.
Yeah.
Like have some destroyer bot squadron defending a convoy, and you have to raid that convoy. And they have all the elements they need for that. And it would be a lot easier to balance and to make interesting.
Exactly. In that case, also, all the work they have done is not in vain.
Yes.
You can reuse all the assets, reuse everything you already done.
Another thing that I don't think they've really talked about in this article is submarine on submarine combat. I feel like feels extremely awkward.
Oh yeah,
And maybe even more so than in previous iterations.
Oh yeah. I mean, the first time I tested submarine, it was okay, but it was not perfect, but it worked. But this time, oh no, it's just awkward.
Yeah, it's the problem is, right? It's often a very long, drawn-out engagement where you miss each other and sail past each other and so on. And might just be decided by whoever has more battleships in the area who drops depth charges in that engagement. But if you actually have a one-on-one fight, it feels awkward, it takes a lot of time, and you're basically not doing anything the whole time. It's like you are in your separate game mode, and everything else doesn't concern you. And then you're just for 5-6 minutes, you are weirdly dancing around each other, and then you merrily go each other's way because you've both grown tired.
And in 101, you're hoping that you are in the American Balau and the enemy is in the German U-boat, because Balau has torps in the aft and Germans doesn't have it.
Yeah,
so you have a clear advantage. You can shoot when you're running away.
Which makes two Germans fighting even more awkward, because most of the time they can't really torp each other. They can make a pass a bit, and then they awkwardly try to maneuver so that they can try it again because the first salvo has failed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything in the article mentioning that. I'm not sure if that's something they are also consider working on, or if it's just so far back their mind because they can't even make other interactions work. Yeah, I think this basically concludes the articles. Or does anyone have anything else to add to submarines?
I mean, I just want to say, fair credit to Wargaming. At least it gives us a topic that we can revisit again and again and again and again.
Makes good content, yeah.
Maybe we can get a Duke Nukem meme. At some point they released Duke Nukem Forever, which took away one of the best memes. Maybe we can make subs a meme like that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the one very last thing we could mention that's sort of news since we had our holiday break is the Giuseppe Verdi came out, which is a sort of Italian/Soviet design. I think it was an Ansaldo design offered to the Soviets. So, it's sort of got some historical roots, but I don't think any of the three of us have actually played it, so we can't really talk about it. But there's going to be videos for people interested in gameplay on YouTube.
Yeah, I haven't even watched any I've just been very disinterested in Italian battleships, and I don't think that they've made any improvements in that regard.
Same here. Italian battleships has been a non-issue for me, so no, I have not seen anything, not paid any attention to it, so.
There are certainly, in terms of battleships, people are spoiled for choice these days, so there's not really any reason to play the most with most unreliable guns.
Yeah, there are a lot of battleships for long range, for close range, and the Italians, they just fit in not in any category. Really well.
They look sexy in port.
True. We all have to be good at something, right?
Yeah.
As the DD main, I usually don't play battleships, but I found one battleship line that actually suits my playstyle. So it's the French battleships. I find them extremely fun to play, but.
No, they are quite different. You just run around like a mad March hare and pew all the things.
Yeah.
Although you can't, you could set them up as torpedo boats. They do have a fast torpedo reload. They're not particularly stealthy at maximum stealth, but yeah, you can have quite a quick torpedo turnaround, which can surprise people quite nastily. And they're fast torpedoes as well, not as fast as the Swedes, but they're still pretty fast. Anyway.
Yeah, I think we just can call it a night here. Or does anyone have anything else to talk about?
No.
I think that's about it, really.
Yeah.
So then, Axillent, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Where can we find you online besides Twitch?
Twitch, and I also have YouTube channel, and I should have been prepared, of course, with a link. Let's see. There it is. Link to my YouTube channel. Oh, okay. Sorry. There we go.
Jim Lau's bot strikes again.
Yeah.
You should have permission now.
No, yeah. There's my link to my YouTube channel. Posted my recent, a new video today, actually. My first for this year. A game commentary in my Östergötland. Had a wonderful game there. And that's it. And I also have Twitch. Twitter. And it's at Axillent1. And I post stuff there when I feel it like it, and when I go live, etc. So please follow me, especially on YouTube, because I try to make YouTube work right now.
Yeah, it's tough to get going on YouTube. Definitely.
Yeah. And I seem to have a bot problem because I have a follower count on YouTube going from 46, 47, 46, 47 every day, back and forth. So I really don't know how many exactly I have.
Either that or somebody's extremely bored.
Yeah.
So, yeah, then thanks everyone for watching. And have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.